Shadows behind. Smiles Arjun. Malhotra adjusted his tie in the mirror, sighing as he heard the chaos erupting from the kitchen downstairs. 6-year-old Vikram was likely arguing with his 8-year-old sister Aditi over breakfast again. 3 years. As a single father had taught him many things, but mastering morning routines remained a challenge. "Uncle Vikram took my toast." Aditi's voice carried up the stairs. "Did not. It was mine," came the inevitable response. Arjun closed his eyes briefly before heading downstairs. Since Prisha's death from cancer, these moments reminded him how much his children needed a mother figure. He'd tried his best, but the gaps in their lives were palpable. Hey, he said, stepping into the kitchen. "We have plenty of toast for everyone." Nisha Sharma, his girlfriend of 8 months, was already there, her long dark hair tied back as she expertly mediated the situation. "Aditi, I've made you a fresh piece with extra jam, just how you like it. And Vikram, yours has the crusts cut off." The children's complaints instantly transformed into smiles. Arjun felt the familiar wave of gratitude that had become commonplace since Nisha entered their lives. At 34, she worked as an interior designer with a schedule flexible enough to help with the children. More importantly, she seemed to genuinely care for them. "You're a lifesaver," Arjun whispered, kissing her cheek as the children ate contentedly. "They're wonderful kids," she replied with a warm smile. "Just spirited." Arjun's technology consulting firm had a major client meeting that morning, and as he gathered his briefcase, he felt the usual pang of guilt about leaving. Before Nisha, he'd relied on a rotation of babysitters and his parents' help when they could manage the trip from Jaipur. "Backpacks ready? Homework inside?" Nisha was already checking, her efficiency another quality Arjun admired. The children nodded, mouths full of breakfast. "I should be back by 6, Arjun said. "The Sharma proposal is finally wrapping up." "Take your time," Nisha assured him. "We'll be fine. I thought I'd take them to the park after school if the weather holds." Aditi beamed. "Can we get ice cream too?" Nisha laughed. "We'll see. Depends on how homework goes." As Arjun kissed his children goodbye, he noticed how Vikram, normally reserved with strangers, leaned comfortably into Nisha's side. It had taken time after Prisha's death, but his son was finally opening up again. Aditi had always been more resilient, but even she had struggled with the rotating cast of caretakers. Driving to work, Arjun allowed himself to imagine a future with Nisha. His parents had been dropping hints about remarriage, concerned about the children growing up without a mother. His friends Rohit and Deepak had introduced him to several potential matches, but none had clicked like Nisha. The office was buzzing with pre-meeting energy when he arrived. His business partner, Samir, greeted him with a coffee and a thick folder. "Ready to secure the biggest client of the year?" Samir asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," Arjun replied, pushing thoughts of home aside to focus on work. Throughout the day, between presentations and negotiations, Arjun found himself checking his phone. A picture from Nisha showed the children working on an art project she'd organized. Another showed lunch she'd prepared. Vikram's favorite sandwiches cut into dinosaur shapes. "Your girlfriend is incredible with them," Samir commented, glancing at the photos. Prisha would have approved. The mention of his late wife brought the familiar ache, but it was softer now. "I think she would have," Arjun agreed. "The kids adore her." What Arjun didn't share was his growing concern about becoming too dependent on Nisha too quickly. Sometimes her perfection seemed almost rehearsed, especially when others were watching. But he dismissed these thoughts as his own insecurities. After all, who wouldn't want someone so attentive in their children's lives? That evening, as the meeting ran late, Arjun texted his apologies. Nisha's response was immediate. "Don't worry. We're having a great time. Take as long as you need." Relief and gratitude washed over him. Perhaps, he thought, this was what second chances looked like. Perfect illusions. The following weeks unfolded like scenes from a movie Arjun hadn't dared hope to star in. Nisha's presence in their home brought a warmth that had been missing since Prisha's passing. Mornings became less chaotic, evenings filled with laughter instead of exhausted silence. Even Arjun's mother, who had been skeptical of any woman entering her grandchildren's lives, had begun to warm to Nisha after her last visit. "She knows how to make Vikram eat his vegetables," his mother had whispered in impressed disbelief. "That boy wouldn't touch a green thing for me." Nisha had integrated herself into their routines with remarkable ease. She knew Aditi's reading level and helped with her advanced comprehension homework. She remembered that Vikram needed his blue blanket during thunderstorms, and that he slept better with the door cracked open just so. She'd learned which teacher was strict about tardiness and which crossing guard gave out candies on Fridays. One evening, as Arjun helped her clean up after dinner while the children worked on a puzzle in the living room, he found himself staring at her profile, overwhelmed by unexpected emotion. "What?" she asked, noticing his gaze. He hesitated. "I never thought we'd have this again. A family that feels whole." Nisha's eyes softened as she dried her hands. "They make it easy to love them," she said. "They're such special children." The word love hung between them, significant and new. Arjun reached for her hand. "You've been amazing with them, especially with Vikram. He was so withdrawn after we lost Prisha." "Children need stability," Nisha replied, squeezing his hand. "And patience. They're still processing their loss, even when they seem fine." These moments of insight impressed Arjun deeply. Nisha had studied child development during her university years before switching to design, and it showed in her approach to the children. At school functions, other parents commented on the positive changes in Aditi and Vikram. Their teacher, Mrs. Batra, pulled Arjun aside during a parent-teacher meeting to mention how Aditi's anxiety seemed much improved, and Vikram was participating more in class discussions. "Whatever changes you've made at home," Mrs. Batra said, "they're working wonders." Samir noticed too. "You're sleeping again," he remarked one day at the office. The zombie look was getting old. It was true. For the first time in years, Arjun didn't feel like he was barely keeping his head above water. His business was thriving with his renewed focus, and home life had transformed from a series of logistical challenges into something joyful. One Saturday, while Nisha took the children shopping for new shoes, Rohit came over to watch a cricket match. As they settled in with beers, Rohit broached the subject Arjun knew had been coming. "So, when are you going to make it official?" he asked bluntly. "What do you mean?" Rohit rolled his eyes. "Don't play dumb. You've practically got stars in your eyes every time she walks into the room, and the kids are clearly attached." Arjun considered this. He'd been thinking about proposing, had even browsed rings online, but something held him back. "It's only been 10 months, he said finally. "Prisha would want you to be happy," Rohit said quietly. "You know that, right?" "It's not about Prisha." Arjun protested, though part of him wondered if that was entirely true. "It's about making sure this is right for Aditi and Vikram. They've been through enough changes." "Those kids light up around her," Rohit pointed out. "And she clearly adores them. Some people search their whole lives for what you've found." That night, after the children were asleep, Arjun and Nisha sat on the porch swing, a habit they'd developed for their rare moments alone. Her head rested against his shoulder as they gently swayed. "The children asked if you were coming to their school play next month," Arjun said. "Of course I am," she replied. "I wouldn't miss it." "They've started to assume you'll be at everything," he said carefully. "You've become very important to them." Nisha turned to look at him. "Is that okay?" "More than okay," he assured her. "It's just, I want to make sure we're on the same page about where this is going, for their sake." She took his hand, her expression serious. "I love them, Arjun, and I love you. I know it hasn't been that long, but I've never been more certain about anything." The declaration should have dissolved all his lingering doubts, but something in her perfect certainty gave him pause. A fleeting shadow crossed her face as she looked away, something like fear or perhaps determination. Later, lying awake while Nisha slept beside him, Arjun dismissed his concerns as the natural caution of a man who'd experienced profound loss. Of course she would be invested in making this work. Of course she would try her best with the children. Everyone said they were lucky to have found her. Everyone commented on how seamlessly she had fit into their lives, how the children had blossomed under her care. And yet, sometimes when he watched her with the children while she thought no one was looking, he caught glimpses of something tense in her smile, something effortful in her patience. But these moments passed so quickly, he wondered if he'd imagined them. Projections of his own fears about entrusting his precious children to someone new. As he finally drifted toward sleep, Arjun resolved to trust what was in front of him. A woman who had brought happiness back into their home, who had given his children stability and love when they needed it most. What more could he possibly ask for? Cracks in the facade. The annual client presentation for Westridge Technologies had dominated Arjun's calendar for weeks. As their largest account, the stakes were particularly high this year with the company considering expansion into international markets. Arjun had prepared meticulously, rehearsing his pitch until Samir jokingly threatened to gag him if he practiced one more time. "Mr. Malhotra," Westridge's CEO said after the presentation, "we'd like to discuss some additional requirements for the Asian market expansion. Do you have time this afternoon?" Arjun's schedule flashed through his mind. He was supposed to attend Aditi's dance class observation day, something he'd promised not to miss. But Nisha had already agreed to be there, and this meeting could secure their company's future for years to come. "Of course," he replied, shooting a quick text to Nisha explaining the situation. "Don't worry," came her immediate reply. "I'll record everything for you." The meeting dragged into late afternoon with detailed discussions about compliance regulations and localization requirements. Just as they seemed to be wrapping up, the CEO introduced yet another topic. "While we have you here," he said, "let's discuss the timeline for Phase 1 implementation." By 5:30, Arjun's shoulders ached from tension, but the contract was secure, with a value nearly double what they'd initially projected. Samir was practically floating as they headed back to their office. "We should celebrate," Samir insisted. "Dinner, drinks, the works," but Arjun shook his head. "I need to get home. I already missed Aditi's dance class. I don't want to miss bedtime, too." Samir nodded, understanding. Family first. "But tomorrow, we're having champagne at lunch." The traffic was mercifully light as Arjun drove home, the setting sun casting long shadows across the road. He felt the familiar mix of professional satisfaction and parental guilt that had become the rhythm of his life. As he turned onto his street, he decided to pick up ice cream as a peace offering for missing the dance class. 20 minutes later, Arjun pulled into his driveway, balancing the ice cream and his briefcase. He noticed the living room lights were off, unusual for this time of evening. Assuming Nisha might have taken the children to the park to burn off energy before bedtime, he entered quietly, not wanting to disturb them if they were already settling down for the night. The house was oddly silent as he set down his things in the foyer. Then he heard it. Vikram's distinctive whimper, the sound he made when trying very hard not to cry out loud. It came from upstairs, followed by Nisha's voice, pitched low and intense in a way Arjun had never heard before. "I told you to stop asking about the dance class," she was saying. "Your father is busy with important work. The sooner you accept that he won't always be there for these things, the better." "But he promised," came Aditi's trembling voice. "Well, promises get broken," Nisha replied coldly. "That's a lesson worth learning young. Now finish your homework without another word about it, or there will be no television for a week. Arjun stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, his mind struggling to reconcile the harsh voice with the warm, patient woman he thought he knew. There was a cruelty in her tone he had never witnessed, a contempt that made his blood run cold. "I don't want to do homework," Vikram said, his voice small but defiant. "I want Daddy." The sharp sound of a hand slapping a table, or something worse, echoed down the stairwell. "Your father chose work over you today, just like he does most days," Nisha snapped. "I'm the one who's actually here, dealing with your constant neediness and complaints. The least you could do is show some gratitude instead of whining for Daddy every 5 minutes." Arjun's shock transformed instantly into a protective fury. He took the stairs 2 at a time, no longer concerned about being quiet. As he reached the top landing, he heard scrambling in the children's room, and by the time he pushed the door open, Nisha was sitting calmly at the desk beside Aditi, her hand gently pointing at a math problem, but Arjun wasn't fooled. Vikram sat on his bed, eyes red-rimmed and startled, a distinct red mark visible on his forearm. Aditi's face was pale, her posture rigid with tension. "Arjun!" Nisha's surprise seemed genuine, her smile automatic. "We didn't hear you come in. How was the meeting?" The transformation was so complete, so practiced, that for a split second, Arjun doubted what he'd heard. Then he saw the fear in his children's eyes. Not the usual excitement at his return, but something closer to relief mixed with apprehension. "Vikram, Aditi," he said, keeping his voice deliberately calm. "Could you go downstairs for a few minutes? I brought ice cream. You can each have 1 scoop while I talk to Nisha." The children exchanged a look he couldn't interpret before quickly sliding off their seats and hurrying past him. Vikram paused briefly to wrap his arms around Arjun's legs, in a tight hug before disappearing down the stairs. When they were alone, Nisha's smile faltered under his steady gaze. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice carefully modulated to convey confusion. "No," Arjun replied quietly. "Everything is not okay. I heard you, Nisha. I heard how you speak to them when you think no one is listening." The color drained from her face, but she recovered quickly. "You must have misunderstood. Vikram was being difficult about homework, and I was just—" "Don't!" Arjun cut her off. "Don't lie to me. Not about this." For a moment, something like the truth flickered across her features. Frustration, resentment, perhaps even relief at being discovered. Then her eyes filled with tears. "They can be so difficult sometimes," she whispered. "I try so hard to be what they need, what you need. But it's exhausting, Arjun. You have no idea what it's like to always be the replacement." "Never the real thing." Arjun took a step back, seeing her clearly perhaps for the first time. "That doesn't explain or excuse what I just heard? Or that mark on Vikram's arm?" Nisha's expression hardened slightly. "He was having a tantrum. I just held his arm to keep him from throwing things." The justification hung in the air between them, revealing more than she intended. Arjun felt a chill spread through him as he wondered how long this had been happening, how many times his children had endured this treatment while he was away. "I think," he said carefully, "that we need to have a serious conversation. But not here. Not with the children downstairs." Nisha nodded, visibly pulling herself together. As she rose from the chair, she reached for his hand, but Arjun stepped back. "First," he said quietly, "I need to make sure my children are okay." Confrontations and confessions. The kitchen felt unnaturally quiet as Arjun watched his children eat their ice cream. Aditi picked at hers methodically, her eyes occasionally darting toward the staircase. Vikram had barely touched his bowl, instead, pressing his cold spoon against the reddening mark on his arm when he thought Arjun wasn't looking. "Is your arm hurting, Beta?" Arjun asked gently. Vikram quickly shook his head, but his eyes welled with tears that threatened to spill over. "It's okay to tell me if something hurts. Arjun continued, keeping his voice calm despite the storm brewing. Inside him. You won't get in trouble for telling the truth. The children exchanged that look again, the silent communication that had developed between them in recent months. Arjun had initially attributed it to their growing bond as siblings, but now he recognized it as something more troubling, a survival strategy. Nisha gets mad, Aditi finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. But only when you're not home. The simple statement landed like a physical blow. Arjun pulled a chair closer to them, sitting so that he was at their eye level. What happens when she gets mad? He asked. Vikram looked down at his ice cream. She yells, and sometimes she squeezes really hard. He touched his arm again. She says we have to be perfect when people are watching or they'll think we're bad kids. And she says we can't tell you, Aditi added, because you already have too many problems, and it would make you sad. The manipulation revealed in those words made Arjun's stomach twist. He had been so desperate to believe they had found happiness again that he'd overlooked the signs. Vikram's renewed bedwetting, Aditi's sudden perfectionism about schoolwork, their increasing anxiety when he announced he would be working late. I'm so sorry, he said, gathering both children into his arms. I didn't know, but I promise you, it's never bad to tell me the truth, even if it's hard, especially then. Is Nisha going to leave? Vikram asked against his shoulder. The question held. No sadness, only uncertainty about what change might come next. Arjun pulled back slightly to look at both his children. Would that make you sad if she did? Another exchange of glances before Aditi spoke. Sometimes she's nice. When you're home, she reads stories and plays games. But we're always scared of doing something wrong, Vikram added. Even when she's being nice. Arjun nodded, understanding completely. You shouldn't have to feel that way in your own home, he said firmly. I'm going to talk to Nisha now, and then we'll figure things out. But I want you to know that keeping you safe and happy is the most important thing to me. More important than anything else. After settling the children with a movie downstairs, Arjun found Nisha in the guest bedroom, methodically folding clothes into her overnight bag. She looked up when he entered, her expression carefully neutral. I think it's best if I go to my apartment tonight, she said. Give everyone some space to calm down. That's probably wise, Arjun agreed, leaning against the doorframe. But we need to talk before you leave. Nisha sat on the edge of the bed, her posture defensive. I know what this looks like, but you have to understand. Help me understand, Arjun interrupted, keeping his voice level. Help me understand how someone who claimed to love my children could speak to them that way, could hurt them. I didn't hurt them, she protested. Not really, I just lost my patience sometimes. Vikram has a bruise forming on his arm, Arjun said flatly. Nisha looked down at her hands. It's not easy, you know, stepping into someone else's life, trying to meet expectations I never signed up for. Do you have any idea what it's like to constantly compete with a ghost? To know that no matter what I do, I'll never be their real mother? That's not what I asked of you, Arjun said. I never expected you to replace Prisha. I just wanted someone who would care for them, respect them. I do care, Nisha insisted, tears spilling over. But it's exhausting pretending to be perfect all the time. The patient, understanding girlfriend who never gets frustrated, never needs a break. You get to go to work, to have adult conversations, to step away. I'm the one dealing with homework battles and sibling fights and endless questions about when their mother is coming back. The last revelation hit Arjun like a physical blow. They still ask about Prisha? Vikram does, Nisha admitted. Usually when he's tired or upset. He doesn't understand that she's never coming back. And I don't know how to handle that. It makes me feel so inadequate. For the first time since discovering her deception, Arjun felt a flicker of empathy. He had thrust Nisha into a complex situation with wounded children, perhaps without adequate preparation or support, but understanding didn't excuse her actions. "Why didn't you tell me you were struggling?" he asked. Nisha laughed bitterly. "And risk losing the perfect family I was trying so hard to be part of? You wanted a solution, Arjun, not another problem. You wanted someone to make your life easier, not more complicated." The accuracy of her assessment made Arjun uncomfortable. Had he been so focused on finding someone to fill the gap in their lives that he'd ignored the very real challenges involved? "That doesn't justify taking your frustrations out on innocent children," he said firmly, "or lying to me about who you really are with them." Nisha wiped at her tears, nodding. "I know. I'm not proud of how I've acted. I felt like I was drowning sometimes, trying to be everything to everyone. And there was no one I could talk to about it." They sat in heavy silence for several minutes, the weight of revelations and regrets filling the space between them. "I think we need some time apart," Arjun finally said. "I need to focus on rebuilding my children's sense of safety and trust." "And us?" Nisha asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "I don't know if there can be an us after this," Arjun admitted. "The foundation has been compromised, and my priority has to be Aditi and Vikram." Nisha nodded, resuming her packing with trembling hands. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "I really did fall in love with you. With all of you. I just wasn't prepared for how hard it would be." As Arjun watched her gather her things, he wondered about the complex truths that lay beneath her confession. People could love and still harm those they claimed to care for. They could want to be better than they were capable of being. And sometimes the desire to create a perfect family could blind everyone to the imperfect reality underneath. Rebuilding trust. The weeks following Nisha's departure unfolded in stages of grief, confusion, and gradual healing. Arjun took a 2-week leave from work, something he hadn't done since Prisha's funeral. This time was dedicated entirely to rebuilding his connection with Aditi and Vikram, creating space for them to process what had happened and begin to feel secure again. The first few days were the hardest. Vikram's nightmares returned in full force, and he would crawl into Arjun's bed in the early morning hours, his small body trembling. Aditi became clingy and anxious, following Arjun from room to room as if afraid he might disappear. "Is Nisha coming back?" Aditi asked on the 4th day, as Arjun struggled to detangle her hair after her bath. "No, beta," he answered honestly. "She isn't." Aditi was quiet for a moment. "Are you sad?" Arjun considered this as he worked through a particularly stubborn knot. "I'm sad that things didn't work out the way I hoped," he said carefully. "But I'm not sad that she's gone, because I don't want anyone in our home who makes you and Vikram feel scared or bad about yourselves." "Even if they're nice sometimes?" Aditi persisted. "Even then," Arjun confirmed. "Love shouldn't hurt, and it shouldn't come with conditions. Real love is consistent and kind, even during difficult moments." That weekend, Arjun's parents arrived from Jaipur, responding to his brief, difficult phone call explaining what had happened. His mother took one look at her grandchildren and seemed to understand everything without being told the details. "These things take time," she said that evening, after the children were asleep. "Not just for them, but for you too, beta." Arjun nodded, staring into his tea. "I should have seen it sooner. There were signs." "Perhaps," his father agreed. "But you wanted to believe in something good for your family. There's no shame in hoping." With his parents' help, Arjun established new routines that prioritized stability and open communication. They started a tradition of feeling talks at dinner, where everyone could share one good and one difficult emotion from their day. Initially, the children were hesitant, but gradually they began to express themselves more freely. "I felt scared when Ms. Batra asked me a question and I didn't know the answer," Vikram confessed one evening. I thought she would be angry like Nisha used to get. And what happened? Arjun prompted gently. She just smiled and said we would figure it out together, Vikram replied, sounding slightly surprised. Most people are patient when we make mistakes, Arjun assured him. That's how we learn and grow. As his leave from work ended, Arjun made significant changes to his schedule, delegating more responsibilities to Samir and their growing team. He arranged to work from home 2 days a week and adjusted client meetings to fit school hours when possible. You're sure about turning down the Singapore expansion project? Samir asked during their weekly planning meeting. It would be huge for the company. I'm sure, Arjun replied without hesitation. The timing isn't right for our family. He had engaged a child psychologist, Dr. Janki Patel, who specialized in trauma and attachment issues. Her gentle guidance helped both children process their experiences with Nisha and strengthen their sense of security. Children are remarkably resilient, Dr. Patel told Arjun during a parent consultation. What they need most now is consistency and the knowledge that their feelings are valid, whatever they may be. Some days were harder than others. There were tantrums and tears, moments when Vikram would shut down completely or Aditi would become overwhelmingly anxious about minor mistakes. During these times, Arjun reminded himself to be the stable presence they needed, even when his own emotions threatened to overwhelm him. 3 months after Nisha left, Arjun received an email from her. It was thoughtful and reflective, expressing genuine remorse for her actions and explaining that she had begun therapy to address her own childhood trauma and the patterns it had created. I don't expect forgiveness, she wrote, but I wanted you to know that I am working to become a better person, someone who would never hurt a child the way I hurt Aditi and Vikram. They deserved better, and so did you. Arjun didn't respond immediately. He sat with the message for several days, discussing it with his own therapist, whom he had started seeing to process his feelings of guilt and failure. Forgiveness isn't about excusing what happened, his therapist, Dr. Kapoor, reminded him. It's about releasing the hold that anger has on you so you can move forward. Eventually, Arjun sent a brief reply, acknowledging her efforts and wishing her well in her healing journey. It wasn't absolution, but it was a step toward his own peace. As spring turned to summer, subtle changes began to emerge in their household. Vikram's laughter, once so rare, became a regular sound. Aditi began to take pride in her independence again, no longer seeking constant reassurance. They planted a small garden together, a symbol of patience and growth that Dr. Janki had suggested. "Look, Papa!" Vikram exclaimed one morning, pointing to the tiny green shoots emerging from the soil. "Our seeds are growing." They just needed the right conditions, Arjun explained, kneeling beside him. Good soil, water, sunlight, and time. "Like people," Aditi added thoughtfully, surprising both Arjun and Vikram with her insight. "We need good things around us to grow, too." On Prisha's birthday, they visited her memorial bench in the city park, bringing fresh flowers and sharing stories about her. It was a tradition they had started the previous year, but this time felt different. Less raw, more celebratory of the love she had given them. "Do you think Mama would be proud of us?" Aditi asked as they walked home, her small hand secure in Arjun's. "Every single day," he assured her. "She would be so proud of how brave and kind you both are." That evening, as Arjun tucked the children into bed, Vikram asked the question that had been forming in his mind for weeks. "Will we ever have another mother? Not like Nisha, but someone nice all the time?" Arjun sat on the edge of the bed, considering his answer carefully. "I don't know what the future holds," he said honestly. "But I promise you that our family is whole just as we are. If someone new comes into our lives someday, it will only be if they add more love and joy, never fear or hurt." "How will you know?" Aditi asked from her bed across the room. "We'll know together," Arjun replied, "because this time we'll move slowly and trust our feelings, all of our feelings, even the uncomfortable ones. They're trying to tell us something important." Later that night, after the children were asleep, Arjun stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the garden they had planted together. Some seeds were sprouting quickly, others taking more time, each growing at its own pace. He thought about the journey they had been on since Prisha's death, the grief, the attempts to rebuild, the painful lessons along the way. There were no perfect solutions or instant healings, only patient growth and genuine connection. Their little family might look different than he had once imagined, but it was real, honest, and increasingly strong. The hidden side of love, he realized, wasn't found in the perfect moments or the carefully crafted appearances. It was in the willingness to see truth, even when it hurt. It was in the courage to begin again after disappointment. And most of all, it was in the small, daily acts of showing up for each other, consistently and authentically, through all the complexities of being human. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight, watching over his sleeping children, Arjun felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. A sense of peace, rooted not in the illusion of perfection, but in the reality of unconditional love.